Siouxland is giving back to those who served. The third annual Freedom Ball took place tonight, raising money for Freedom Park in South Sioux City. KTIV's Connor Trett was there and brings us more about this amazing fundraiser.
In 2021, members of the Freedom Park Board were looking for ways to celebrate our nation's military and veterans, and the first Freedom Ball was born to find immediate success.
So we landed on a ball, and in the military there's a military ball a lot of times, and that's just for the military. So we decided to have a Freedom Ball so we can invite our supporters, our public, everyone in Siouxland to attend and celebrate and help raise some money for Siouxland Freedom Park.
The park in South Sioux City, Nebraska erected a half-scale replica of the Vietnam War Memorial in 2014. And since then, they've been looking to expand. The money raised during the Freedom Ball has given the park a chance to do just that.
I think it's a hugely important initiative to recognize all of those who came before us and to draw people in and teach them about those past and present.
Even though it's only existed for 2 years, over $500,000 has already been raised to continue expanding Freedom Park. In fact, this Korean War Memorial that was just unveiled on Friday was 100% funded through donations that were made in the 2022 Freedom Ball. And with continued donations, that expansion will surely be able to continue.
We'll be raising money for future projects, also to add a few of the amenities to some of the existing. But we will have other opportunities for more monuments, more memorials, and always something that we can honor our veterans with.
This year, the Freedom Ball honored women who served in the U.S. Armed Forces. Denison, Iowa native Brigadier General Bobby Dorenbos, who was the first female fighter pilot with the Air National Guard, was the keynote speaker.
I was in the military for about 25 years at a time when there weren't a lot of women in these kind of male-dominated roles. And so my hope is simply that by telling my story, that some part of that message will resonate with folks who are either looking to explore military as a possible career, or anyone generally who is going through a difficult time and is looking for some kind of inspiration.
In South Sioux City, Nebraska, Connor Trett, KTIV News 4.
And KTIV's own Al Jones and his wife Melissa were the MCs of the evening. If you'd like to learn more about Siouxland Freedom Park, or you'd like to know how you can help honor local veterans and military members, you can visit this story at KTIV.com.